Дорогие друзья, мы начинаем наше мероприятие. Я буду говорить без
Prends la copie papier de ça, juste pour que je vois les slides suivants.
Non.
C'est pas grave.
Значит, к нам сегодня в гости приехал мистер Фрэнк Коэн, президент компании SAP по региону ЕМЕА, Европа, Средний Восток, Африка. Парменова Наталья Дмитриевна, директор по стратегическому развитию компании SAP СНГ. Юрий Викторович, менеджер программ взаимодействия с вузами и исследовательскими организациями компании SAP. Не надо, я громко. Для трансляции в интернет, да? Куприянов Юрий Викторович, менеджер программ взаимодействия с вузами и исследовательскими организациями компании SAP по России и странам СНГ.
Good morning. I think you will have no problem with my English. I'm not a native English speaker myself, so you will be able to catch up. You don't have to worry with that. And I'll try to slow down the pace anyway, so you can really catch up with what I'm saying. So let me introduce myself. My name is Frenk Koen. I'm the president for SAP in what we call EMEA. EMEA stands for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And that's the region I'm in charge. It's a pleasure for me to be here. It reminds me one of my very first jobs. I was a mathematics teacher, and I had the same experience many times. I enjoy it very much, by the way. It's refreshing for me to be here. It's also a pleasure to be here in this prestigious university, and I think it's definitely our objective in Russia to spend a lot of time as part of our University Alliance program to try to let you know about IT, let you know about our companies, and possibly recruit many of you to join our company and join the SAP community one way or another. So what I would like to do today is to cover this topic that you see here. What is the role of IT in the organization today? I've been in this software industry for the last 26 years. That's the only thing I have ever done, except being a mathematics teacher, actually. So I think that I would love to share with you my experience. And also I'll try to, as you will all be confronted one way or another with some part of software in your future, whether as an end user or as a manager having to make some decisions. I would like to share with you also the way I look at the role of software in particular in those organizations, and how we can possibly fight against some conventional wisdom when it comes to how to implement a software and what is the value of the software in a company. Now, I hope it's going to be a dialogue. I bring that because I love to sketch stuff at the same time. But I hope that you're going to have a lot of questions, and feel free to interrupt. I will be more than happy to get any questions at any point of time. If you don't understand what I'm saying, you just stop me, okay? You don't just continue and forget it. Stop me, I will explain, okay? Great, so let's start with first what is SAP today and who we are as a company. So just to give you a little bit of a scorecard about SAP, these are the figures from last year. So SAP is a software company. We are focusing on business application. That's what we do. And our revenue, our total revenue last year was 14.2 billion euros. You can see that the most important piece is, of course, how much additional software are we selling. The important thing of why it's so important to look at software revenue is because software revenue means market share. You gain market share against your competitor, and when you sell a software, then you sell a lot of things as part of the recurring business. You sell maintenance fees, you sell service fees. So the software is driving the rest of the revenue in a software industry like us. So last year we sold for 4 billion of software, additional software to companies. The rest, or the remaining 10 billions, are roughly 7 billion of maintenance. And now you understand the importance of having this new software so you can get the maintenance. Typically, our customers are paying a fee of 20% per year or 22% to be precise, per year as part of the process. And the idea is that they pay this fee on top of what they paid originally so that they get the evolution package as such. So we guarantee them that we will deliver new functionalities, new features, and also we will take care of the help desk and the support they need if they have any issue with the software. The remaining part is service fees. We also do some part of services to actually follow up and monitor some of the projects that we are doing. So that's the 14 billion revenue. Very important thing to mention is last year was a great year for SAP. It was actually our best year ever in the SAP history. We had a 25% software growth. And that's in a market that was very difficult. If you remember last year, it was a big debt crisis in Europe. We also had the situation in the Arab countries. So it was a lot of I would say, turbulence in the market. Still, I think we deliver a stellar performance with this 25% growth. We have 56,000 employees worldwide today. And as you see, we have an ecosystem of more than 300,000 consultants who are certified consultants, who are knowledgeable about SAP and can implement our software. If I look at Europe, I'm not going to go to details, no important here, but basically Europe represents 50% of this revenue. So 7 billion, and same thing for everything else. So it's half of the revenue we are here. SAP originally is a German company, so it's a German headquartered. It has been created actually exactly 40 years ago. We are celebrating our 40 years anniversary this year. And with that, it's one of the longest company in this industry, with the longest longevity in terms of our presence in the software market. And I will go through the history of SAP so you understand what were the main milestones and how we evolve, or we actually shape the industry, this industry and the IT industry with our innovation agenda. If I now look at the CIS in particular, this is the third largest market for SAP. So it's a very important market for SAP. As you can imagine, we still have North America, US, and Germany being not 1 and 2. But CIS is, for instance, more important in terms of revenue than UK or France or India or China today. So just to give you an idea of the importance of CIS for SAP. So last year's revenue was roughly 400 million. Very important, the software revenue was 170 million. So that's a very important part because, as I said, that's what is driving and generating future revenue. 34% software growth, so even more than the average. So a great performance here in CIS. And we already have 700 employees here in CIS. Last year, based on those performance, we have announced what we call the CIS growth plan. So we made a press conference with some of our board members, and we announced that we are now embarking upon a 5-year growth plan with a significant investment that we are going to do in this country. Our objective is to triple our revenue, is also to double our size in terms of headcounts. And as part of the plan, we decided to open an SAP lab in Skolkovo to really be part of the infrastructure and participate to the evolution of this country. One of the reasons why we also decided to put this lab is because I think Russia is very well known for their mathematicians. I know exactly what I mean by that. I had a lot of colleagues coming from this region. I have a PhD in mathematics, just for you to know, so that's where I'm coming from. And so I was, of course, very interested in having this lab here because I think we can take advantage of the value and the great education when it comes to scientific courses that you have here. So that's in essence where we are and what is the picture. We are recruiting heavily. I think we are recruiting this year 100 people, a bit more.
500.
This year?
With replacement.
Wow, even more than I thought. 300.
Already 800.
800. So you see it's going, so if you go on 10 minutes, it will be a bit more. But clearly, we are growing very fast, and we are investing a lot in this region. We are also expanding in the rest of the countries in CIS. So as a result of that, we now already have an office in Kazakhstan, in Belarus, in Ukraine, and we want to continue to expand also our geographical presence in this region. So that's what SAP is about. Just to tell you a bit more about the history of SAP, which I think it could be quite interesting for you. So SAP has been created in 1972. And the people who created SAP were IBM employees. You were probably not even born there in 1972. No, all of you are not there, for sure. Maybe your parents can tell you something about this period. But in 1972, IBM was actually the leader by far of this industry. It was the company in IT, and one of the only one that was supporting and delivering mainframes, which was a huge computer that they had at this point of time. These 5 people that were working for IBM in Germany came to their manager and said that they have an idea that instead of developing from scratch a solution for each and every customer all the time, why don't we create a system that will be valid for many customers? And they also came up with this idea that we should do things in real time. Before that, everything was done through card pouching. I don't know if you see what I mean, but what people were doing is they were coding cards. And then you were putting the card into the computer. The computer was reading the cards and giving you some result. So basically, nothing was done in real time. You always had what we call the batch processing. So you enter some information, and then you get the result a few hours later. And of course, every single process was done in sequence. So you had to wait for the first result, punch new cards, get a new result. And these guys came and said, why don't we try to do real-time computing? So instead of punching cards, people can enter the data from a keyboard. And the guy from IBM said, we don't believe in this idea, that it will never work. So these guys decided to split from IBM and create their own company. And that's how they invented SAP. The first thing they did was to focus on creating a financial package. So something that will do accounting, which is a common needs for every single company in this world. So they started to develop that with some German companies, and they had some great result. It was the first company coming with a real-time solution, not a batch processing in this market. And of course, it was mainframe based. So these huge computers that cost a fortune. And that's why it was only valid for very few companies in this world. Only the very large companies can afford to have a computerized system. That was in the 1970s and the beginning of the 80s. So they created what we call this R2, which was the first major release of SAP. In the 90s, if you remember, that's when the first PC came. The PC that you are using every day, your personal computer, was not even existing at the end of the 80s. I think the first PC, it was if I forget the video type of computing system, or the game that was the Commodore and the Atari of this world, the real personal computing system were actually promoted by a company like Digital. IBM came quite late in this business, and it was already the end of the 80s when the first PC came. So everybody is using that today, so it seems like it has been there forever. It's only 20 years old. I remember when I started in this business, we had no personal computer. It was not even existing. And it might be strange, but we also no phones, right? So you had to stop on the road and find a public phone to make any announcement of anything. The mails were not there either. There is no emails available. So you had to do letters instead. So I'm not going to go to this dinosaur time, because that doesn't make any good things for you. But what I want to say is that all this IT business, and all this IT industry is actually very fresh. It's only 20 years old. And the acceleration that we have seen is incredible and continue to be even faster and faster. The second major evolution of SAP came when we take advantage of the PC. So then all of a sudden we realize that those small PCs are very powerful. They have a lot of CPUs. They can do a lot of computing. And so why don't we use those PCs to do part of the job? So we can distribute the workload and use more CPUs, and much cheaper, because mainframe, remember, were very, very expensive. That's when we came with this client server. So client server means that you have a server, and then you have multiple clients, the PCs, that are not only here to enter the data, but contribute to the process. That was the R3 version. That was a major breakout in this industry, and a major evolution compared to what we call the green screen. Before that, all the desktop were terminals. We call it the dumb terminal because they were really dumb. They had no intelligence into the terminal. So all you do from a terminal was to enter data. We call them also the green screen because mostly it was green. No mouse, nothing. All you have to do is to enter the data from this keyboard. With the client server, we start to introduce Windows as a user interface, and we introduced the mouse. That was the first time we start to use more user-friendly type of interface. So that was a major evolution in the industry. Everybody after that started to also do the same and develop similar solutions. And that's what made the real success of SAP. If we look at what happened in the year 2000, then everything became internet-centric. So internet became a de facto standard. And that has changed a lot of things, because you have to understand that without internet, this idea of sharing information, this idea of being able to transport the information was a real issue. Before internet, you had to have your own line that the company had to pay in order to be able to transport data from a point A to the point B. The line lease cost was more expensive than the whole hardware cost at that point of time, because you had to ask the telecommunication companies to really physically create a line for you. So they had to dig a hole, put the line, get from the point A to the point B. And of course you can imagine the cost of doing that, especially if you have multiple offices and you want to have an access to all your offices. That was almost impossible. So you can use a telephone, but of course with a very bad response time and a bad performance, or you had this leased line, private line, that people were using at that point of time. Again, because of the cost attached to it, you understand that it was a major showstopper for companies to use IT across the geographies. And that's why internet was a real revolution, because internet allow every single company to transport the data from A to B at almost no cost or very low cost. That has been a major change for all our software industries. That allow you to have access to your store if you are any brand, or to your warehouses or to your plant at any point of time, and share information between the sales office, the manufacturing plant, and the delivery warehouse at the same time. So SAP came with a release in the year 2000, and we call it My SAP Business Suite, but it was basically to be able to enable SAP so that we can use internet as a vehicle to transport and communicate the information. That was a revolution in the year 2000. What is happening now is a revolution that is going to change fundamentally the future of IT even more. And that might seem a bit strange, but let me try to explain to you what is the new innovation and what is happening right now. What is happening right now is we move. You remember I told you that we are moving from desktop dumb terminal to intelligence terminals, the PCs, so that you can have some intelligence, better user interface, and do some activities. Use the CPU of your PC. What is happening today is that we believe that the desktop is going to move from what we have today to mobile. We believe that mobile will be the future desktop for the new generation, for you as the future users. We believe that smartphone and tablets is the future terminal. And why is that? Very simple. First of all, there are 7 billion smartphones or tablets already in place. Mobile, smartphone, and tablets are 7 billion devices. The mobile devices will double by 2015. So you will have 15 billion devices where you can have access to data in 3 years. And we believe that there is so many devices now, so intelligent. The CPU that you have on your smartphone is 20 times much powerful than the one we had in the PC when we start with the PC. So you can do a lot with the CPU you have on your mobile. And that continues to grow faster and faster. So we believe that mobile is a new revolution. It's also responding very nicely to what has always been the holy grail of the software industry. In essence, what software industry wants to achieve was very simple. Give access to any data to anyone at any time, anywhere. That's the holy grail of software. We want to give access to everybody in the company, every end users, every people in the ecosystem, and you should be able to give them access to everything you have in terms of data and information, everywhere, and not in certain point of time, but any times during the day. Only mobile can do this. You will not go with your PC everywhere. I don't go anywhere without my smartphone. I have 3. You know that in most countries in the world, the number of mobile is higher than the number of inhabitants. I don't know what is the ratio in Russia, but for instance, in Italy, it's 1.7 per habitant. So you have much more mobile than people in any country. And why is that? Because, again, you probably have more than one yourself already. So we believe very much on the mobile revolution. We believe that the software will shift from desktop to mobile. And that's a massive change that is going to revolutionize the way software are built, are designed, and are utilized across the globe. There is another innovation that is going to change the IT future. And that's what we call in-memory computing. Let me try to explain what is that. For the last 30 years, we have been creating data like crazy. The amount of data available in this world is doubling every 18 months. Okay, so you create more data in 18 months that we have created in 2,000 years. Digital information is doubling every 18 months. Now, what is the purpose of all this massive amount of data if you are not able to analyze this data on real time? The whole idea of data is to be able to analyze the data, to be able to go and match the speed of decision that people have to make, that decision makers have to do today. Now, the way we analyze data today and the way we store the data has been exactly the same for the last 30 years. We store data in disk servers. That's what you have on your PC. That's also what exists in large mainframe and large computers. You have disk servers. You know what a disk server is? The disk server is a mechanical arm that is moving to the disk to try to fetch data and retrieve that into your CPU. It's a mechanical exercise. You have to move the arm physically to fetch data. Of course, it's very slow. And that doesn't match at all the speed of information that we need. We also use relational database to store this information, to organize this information. You know, the data can be structured or unstructured, but I think if you are in an IT course, you probably understand what I mean by relational database. I'll be happy to explain if you want me to explain. But if we can skip that, that will be good, because that will save 5 minutes of my speech. So if you understand what relational databases are, that's the way you organize the data. You index the data, so you can retrieve this data using different search keys, so to speak. Now, again, this relational database has been the same, and the same equation, the same patterns for the last 30 years. And what we say at SAP today is that we challenge this status quo. We challenge the fact that this server is the best way to store data. We challenge the status quo that relational database is the best way to store information and to organize data. And we came up with a new idea, which is in-memory computing. So what we are saying is basically, what if we can store everything in memory? So you don't have to have this disk, these mechanical arms to go and fetch data from the disk. That does not exist anymore. Because all you do is to use in-memory DRAM, if you see what I mean, to store your data. What if instead of storing the data into a relational database, we store it into a column store database, which is much, much faster? So the in-memory computing innovation from SAP is actually a mix of multiple things. It's in-memory computing analysis combined with massive parallel processing together with column store of data. So you store the data in column, not in line, has a big impact in terms of fetching the data. And also along with a huge compression algorithm for the data that you store in memory. So now what you can do with this new innovation is you can analyze the data. We call it real time. So you can analyze any amount of data in seconds in terms of hours or days. Now you can think of, okay, so what is the importance of analyzing data much faster? Let me give you a couple of examples. Let's assume that, let's have a couple of what-if scenarios to give you an idea of the magnitude of this change. What if we give to the healthcare industry, to the hospitals, the capability to check online their diagnosis against millions of patient records to find the best possible medication? Don't you think it will have an impact? What if we can analyze and predict the forecast of what is going to happen next in terms of the retail store and what they sell in their store, when we know how fast it goes? What if we can analyze data at the speed of light and leapfrog the competitions in terms of coming with a new trend or with the new ideas? So it has a lot of impact on public sector. It has a lot of impact on the private companies, because that allows them to analyze data of any amount in real time. Today, the way the systems are organized in large companies are very simple. You have a transactional system to do all your applications, the order entry, the countings, everything else. And they created another environment for business intelligence, for what we call analytics. So because the speed is not good enough here, because it's too much, and they cannot analyze the data, they managed to pre-aggregate some inquiries and put that into a separate environment. And of course, here you can make some request, but that does not allow you to do it on real time. You have to fetch the data from the transactional system once a day, and then you can analyze the data. What we are saying is that you don't need these two systems today. You can have everything into one system, and you can analyze your data and do any simulation you want in real time. So imagine companies can close their books, not only once a month, but every day. They can get their profit margin, not once every quarter, but every minute when the transaction is happening. There is a very good example also in the retail industry that I need to share with you. We have a customer in Japan, which is the largest electronic appliance retail company in Japan. They have 27 million customers in their loyalty program. And they have thousands of stores in Japan selling electronic supplies. Once a month, this company used to run a promotion campaign. So they take all the cash receipt, all the promotion they have from their suppliers, and they calculate specific promotion for each of their 27 million customers that they send to them by email. This calculation used to take 3 days. So they were only capable of doing that once a month. What they do today is that when the guy is entering into the store and is buying a product, they run this promotion online and offer him something else to buy with a personalized discount while he's still in the store. So what they were supposed to do in 3 days, they do in 3 seconds. That changed completely their capability to personalize a relation with their customer. So you can see, whether we talk about private business or public business, there are plenty of things that we can do using this real-time computing. And that's the second major innovation of SAP today. One is mobile, and the second one is what we call in-memory computing that we brought to the market only last year. This product was available only from June 2011, and it is the fast growth product sales that we have ever seen at SAP. We sold more than 100 million euro of revenue from this product. We call it HANA in 6 months than any other product. So that's the future of IT. Now, let me tell you about what is happening in the global economy and the way IT and those innovations can play a role in reshaping the future of the organization. So first of all, the reality today is that the growth is coming from emerging markets, not from Western Europe or from the US, where the growth is anemic, to say the least. The GDP growth in Europe, in Western Europe this year will be less than 1%. So clearly, the growth has shifted from continental Europe and US to emerging market. India, China, CIS, Middle East are growing much faster than the rest of Europe. And therefore, of course, we are also shifting our attention a lot more to this region. We have this debt crisis in Europe and in the US. That is a huge issue because the public sector having such a large deficit, they of course are very concerned about their investment that they can make, and that's creating an overall uncertainty in the economy. As I said, you have a lot of consumers that are now consuming your product and can check online and compare your product with other brands everywhere, anytime. And there are limited resources. The resources we have are very limited in terms of energy, gas consumptions. So of course we have to deal with that as well. As a result of that, and you have seen the different cycle that we had since 2008, there is a lot of uncertainty in this market. And you have to live with this uncertainty. And the first reaction from companies were to cut costs. So what they did when they see this crisis coming is, let's cut some cost so we can survive. And I fully understand that. The first thing they did is to cut IT spending. Because you cannot cut costs in terms of stopping your production. That's very difficult. Typically, where you can cut costs quite easily is your marketing cost and your IT spending. Instead of changing my system, I will keep it for another year, for another 2 years. So we have seen the IT budget being reduced significantly in the last few years. And of course, we have, as a software company, to respond to that and be able to offer some solutions to companies who have to reduce their IT spending. The second thing is we have to innovate at a higher speed. So what I'm telling to the companies in Europe is very simple. You can continue to cut costs, but there is a limit to this exercise. You already touched the bone. There is no flesh anymore. If you continue to cut costs, you're going to damage your business. Why don't you think about IT being able to help you to innovate? So my fundamental belief is that people have to think about IT not as a cost center, but as a profit center. Being able to innovate, to reinvent some processes, to change the way they do business, and of course to increase also the productivity of the different companies. So there are major trends that are of course going to transform the IT landscape. The first thing is, I mentioned that already, is all this idea of the billion of devices that will be online and where you can access data in real time. The cloud is a second evolution of the IT landscape that is very important. The whole idea is that now that we have internet and this kind of speed to transport the data, why do you need to store the data in your own office? If you store the data in your own office, in your own premise, you may have not enough space and you have to buy more or too much space. In both cases, it is not optimized. What if we can share space and consume that in large data centers through what we call the cloud? So the cloud is nothing else than the data is somewhere else, and it's transported and delivered to you as a service instead of having your own infrastructure. So why is that so interesting? Couple of reasons. Number one, it is less expensive than to have your own hardware. Number two, it is more flexible. You pay and you consume as a service. So you can add more consumptions if you have more business, or less consumption if you have less business. It is much more flexible than to have your own system. So what is happening is that you can see a lot of providers that can afford to give you access to their data center at a very cheap price. You can store 1 gigabyte of data on Amazon.com for $1 per month. So then you can ask yourself, why should I store the data in my own premise if I can have this price available? And what we start to see is software being provided as a service through the cloud. So let me give you an example. If you do your travel expenses in a large company like us, 55,000 people are doing their travel expenses. So you have to say where you go. I've been in this hotel, I've been in this, I'm using this flight, and then you have to transmit that so you get your reimbursement. It's a huge process, not a lot of value added. So instead of doing that on a paper on your own site, you can imagine easily to do that in the cloud and just pay based on the number of transactions, for instance. So we believe that a lot of commodity processes will move to the cloud because cloud will offer a better and more flexible solution for companies and organizations, public or private. Social, I think that it's very important to understand that. I covered the big data already, but I want to say a word about the social network. I'm sure you are very familiar with that, and you are probably all having more than one account on Facebook and Twitter and the new Google social media. What I want to say is very simple. What is happening here is, in average, when you had a problem with a brand in the past, we calculated in marketing surveys that you will spread this information to 7 people. So in average, when you are not happy with something, you were informing 7 people about your dissatisfaction. Because of the social media, today the average is 7,000. So anything that is happening, the echo is 1,000 more important than what it used to be. And why is that so important? Because first of all, if you have a brand like SAP, like anybody else, your brand is at risk if you don't deliver the level of satisfaction to every single customer. Every single customer on this planet, if he's not happy with your service, if he's not happy with your product, can damage your brand. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, the way we interact is really very much through social media. So we need to adapt to that in terms of how we communicate to companies and to people as well. And that's what we did through this exercise. So to make it simple, because of the new area, the new domain that we see now, the cloud, the mobility, we believe that the software market in terms of addressable market is growing very significantly. And what was a $160 billion market is now much more than what it used to be. And of course, it includes all the different dimensions that you can see here. So what is our strategy at SAP? The strategy is very simple. We want to address those 5 different market categories. Application, where we deliver specific solutions for the specific industries. We are the market leader in the application business. Analytics, how do you analyze this data? What we call business intelligence. We are also the leader in this category today. And we want, of course, to extend our footprint. Mobile, we acquired a company called Sybase in 2010. Sybase was the de facto leader in the mobile business application software industry. And by that, we adopted this technology, and we are now using that in every single part of the project we are having. Again, to encourage this idea of mobile is the next device for the new generation. Database and technology, as I said, we challenge the status quo, and we come with this in-memory computing database that is going to change the IT landscape in the future. And finally, we acquired a company called SuccessFactors this year. SuccessFactors is a a company working on what we call HCM, Human Capital Management. They have 15 million users using their system every day. And of course, that gives us a very strong platform to start with, to also become the cloud leader in this market. And we expect to deliver 2 billion of revenue, profitable revenue by 2015 using the cloud. So these are the different aspects of the technology. Now it's interesting to see where the company sees their IT priorities moving forward. And as you can see here, effectiveness and efficiency are the most important criteria for people to invest in IT. So when we ask companies, where are your IT priorities for the future, these are the response that we got. They want to increase the effectiveness of their business, the efficiency of their processes, and of course, as I mentioned to you already, they have to reduce their IT cost. These are their IT priorities. You can see that the new product or new service, the innovation piece, is actually quite strong. Already 30% of the companies consider that IT priorities is to be able to invent new product or new services using IT. So I think that's an interesting conversation. Of course, for a company that wants to become global, IT become a priority. You have to be able to communicate with your subsidiaries across the globe. And that's why entering new market is also a priority. I have 5 minutes to go. Okay, so I will go fast. So that's the barriers to implement a new system, the way that companies are saying. So you can see that company culture and lack of skills are very important barriers to implement new IT projects. I think the lack of skills is the reason we are here. We want to educate people so they know more about SAP. At SAP, we believe that we need an additional 5,000 to 6,000 SAP consultants in CIS in the next 3 years. And if we don't find and educate 5,000 to 6,000 consultants, that will become a showstopper for us to continue to grow. And then we ask them, you know, what kind of utilization of new platforms they are going to do. It's interesting to see that social internet technology is, of course, on top of their preoccupation. You can see that analytics continue to be a key element. Again, the creation of new products and new services is still growing, but it's not one of the key priorities as it is today for most of the companies. Now let me just finish in the last 3 minutes by trying to challenge some of the common statements that you see around how to implement a software and how people are considering a new software or entering into a new software into their company. So the first thing that you hear, and I have to say especially from company here in CIS, is that we have to take time. We have to take it and to take time to digest it because it's complex. My idea is that it's exactly the contrary. You have to go fast to deploy it. And time is your enemy. Why? Because if you put the design of a software today and you spend 3 years to design your next system, your next processes, while you will implement, you will already have to revisit that. There is no sub. So I think that we have to enter into a fast consumption of software. And we have to implement software in weeks, new software in weeks, not in years and not in months anymore. The second thing is that the first thing to do is to implement the core business processes. It's wrong. You have to think about analytics first. Why? Because you can only improve what you can measure. If you cannot measure, you cannot improve. So the first thing you have to do is to make sure you have some dashboard with some analytics to be able to reflect what are your objectives. Why are you doing this IT project? The third thing is people are focusing very much on how much the software costs to go to a new system and how much will be the implementation cost. Wrong, because you're going to use this system for 20 years. You should focus on the total cost of ownership, how much it costs every year to maintain your system. The software piece that you pay at the very beginning, if you look at the 7 years longevity of your software, will be less than 3% of the total cost. So when people are focusing on the software cost, they should focus on what will be my operational cost every year to run the system. We have customers that are 40 years using the same system. The longevity of a new software like SAP is in average 10 to 15 years. So that's the horizon you should look at if you make an economic comparison in different systems. You have to customize to adapt to each and every specific needs. Wrong. Use the system as it is. Keep it as a vanilla approach. Customize is a cancer of IT. IT and SAP should be used as it is and take advantage of the functionalities of the system. Why? Because if you customize too much, you will not get access to the new functionalities that we are deploying every 6 months. So you have to keep the system as close as possible to the standard approach. You have to learn through experience. Wrong. Focus on education before and after. Education is one of the key reasons why projects are failing. Projects are not a success. Education is the key element. If you don't understand the system you use, you are not comfortable with that. You will not take advantage of this system. And you will try to work around your system. Focus on processes. No, focus on data quality. If your data is not good, you will not be able to do anything. We call it garbage in, garbage out. If you put garbage in the system, you will only get garbage as a result of that. So you have to focus very much on the data quality, the source of the information. You can improve the processes, but if your data is not correct, it's not the right level of granularity, you will never be able to fix that. IT software is a recipe for everything. So I see a lot of companies coming and having some trouble, and they believe that implementing a new software is going to fix all their issues. Wrong. IT is only a catalyst that will help you to do better if you are doing already well, but that's not going to rescue a company that have a wrong strategy or a wrong product set. So don't expect software to be any magic in any companies. Software implementation is an IT project. Wrong. The top management should absolutely be involved in those projects. Only if the management, and if it's a company project, it will be a success. That cannot only be an IT activity. Communicate to the project about the project when you are ready. Wrong. You have to communicate from the very first day and do this communication in the change management campaign during the implementation of a new software. Use the opportunities to implement a new software to optimize all your processes. Completely wrong. You have to simplify. If you want to make it fast and if you want to get the benefits, make it simple. And then you will grow and you will do multiple iterations. All software are equal. That's completely wrong as well. We believe that we have a much better software than the others, by the way. But it is wrong because all software are very different in essence. And you have to take the time to really analyze that. Most of the issues in software projects are technical. That's absolutely wrong. There are human issues, people issues, how people adapt or not, how people resist to any changes, how much they understand about the system. These are the issues that you will see. Content rich is key. Of course content rich is key, but I think the user interface is absolutely important. The user friendliness of the system is absolutely key to get this adoption from the people. And that's why it's important to use mobile and smartphone, which are more intuitive than the desktop. The technical platform is a commodity. Well, that's not completely true. If you like cars, you can look at the car from outside, but you open the hood to see the engine. Look at the engine as well and you buy your software. The engines are a bit different. You have V4, V6, V8, V12, different engines. You have to look at the engines. And then everybody believes that we receive this 5,000-page document. We call it RFP, Request for Proposal. So companies are putting a lot of effort and buy for a fortune from consulting firms books like this with thousands and thousands of questions to try to make a rational decision which software to use. And they believe that because of the fact that they get these questions and the ratings, they can select the best, scientifically the best software. It's absolutely wrong. It will be an emotional decision at the end. And it's people-based. You buy from people, you sell to people. So the people are making the difference. And if you feel more comfortable with this team or with this company, ethical values, that's very important when you make a decision as well. So again, all I wanted to do is to really share with you some of the experience. I'd get very fast, and I'm already late, right? So I have to stop here. In essence, what I want to tell you is that, I've been selling this software for 25 years. I'm still very passionate about this software. I love this job. And I encourage you, if you are interested, it's a very interesting job in general because you touch everything. You touch every single dimension of the business. You will learn new things every day. You visit new companies every day with new challenges. And again, if you are intellectually curious, I think whether you join us as a consultant or as a software on the sell side, that's a very interesting journey. So I would encourage you to go to our booth and see if you have some, if you want to apply for a job, you are more than welcome. That's in essence what I wanted to tell you. I don't know if we have a few minutes time for questions. Please.
At first, thank you, Frank, for such an interesting presentation. And I believe we have seen SAP as a very powerful corporation. And do you personally believe that such multinational corporations as SAP and many others with such a huge and expensive innovation strategy, they possess nowadays even more power over some political decisions, for example, than the national states or even some international organizations?
It's a very good point. First of all, let me just say, to make it very clear, that SAP is not only working with private sector. One of the largest business we have is a public sector. So we deliver solution for the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Defense, healthcare, tax and management system. A lot of countries are using SAP to collect income taxes. So we do a lot of things on the public side as well. I believe that political decisions are important to enable IT. So what I see here in Russia in terms of broadband networks and Silicon Valley's initiatives are good initiatives that will allow companies to invest. Now, I fundamentally believe that the political roles is to enable companies, offer them a large infrastructure. I want to believe that still decision will be made by companies and public administration based on the value they get out of their software. What we try to demonstrate in Russia so far is you will get more value to work with us than with any of our competitors. And we put the value in front of everything. So anytime we enter into a new project with an administration, with a bank, or with a telecommunication company, we try to demonstrate what will be the value for them. What is a business case to adopt IT? Because if you put a business case behind, it's becoming more rational. You don't make a decision because you like this guy or because of any political reason. You do it because it's good for the company or it's good for the country. And that's what we are aiming to do at SAP.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I guess it isn't information for undisclosure, but could you name just a few clients in the EMEA region from financial sector? I mean, banks, insurance companies.
Oh, we have thousands of companies. I mean, we have companies here in Russia. Sberbank is a very large customer. I'm going to visit in a couple of hours. We have all the large Deutsche Bank in Germany is one of the largest customers we have. Royal Bank of Scotland, Barclays, the Société Générale in France, the Citibank in the US. I think we have more than 3,000 banks across the globe that are using our system, so it will be difficult to give you a lot of names now. I guess bear banks can talk to you, right? So
when you are talking about your objective to focus on cloud, on storing information off the premises of a firm, the question that really worries me is the data really safe when it's kept off the premises? And is it going to be hard to persuade the companies to opt for this kind of strategy? That's the first issue. And the second issue, you are saying that you want to focus on the developing economies. And my question is, say you are approached by the local government and it says, we want the data, and they want to bypass the official channels, and they just tell you, well, we want it, and you work on our territory, so either you comply or get out. What would your response be to that?
So your question about the safety of data is very important. You may have seen some issues with some of the very large brands recently who had some flaws in their systems. I don't know about you, but I have a young son who is playing on the Sony PlayStation, and he was really pissed off because he could not access to his account for a few days. So what I want to say here is that the first thing to say is that we don't believe that 100% of the data will move to the cloud. We don't believe at all in such a black and white world. we believe the world tomorrow will be an hybrid world, where you will have some of your data, the competitive data, on your premise. So you can really keep that very close to you. Some of the commodity processes will move to the cloud. And a lot of data will move to mobile, which, by the way, create in itself an issue in terms of security flows. If you start to have very critical data on your mobile, how do you make sure that when the guy is leaving the company, how do you make sure when he's traveling that the right people have access to this data? So what I want to say is that cloud is not the solution for everything. Cloud will be the solution for some of the processes. And again, the complexity will be to administrate and orchestrate all those layers at the same time for any particular company. When it comes to emerging market and the fact that they want their own data in their own data center, I think that, our objective is to comply with regulation in each and every market. So we have countries that have very strong regulations in terms of security of data or the certification of the data. We work with many organizations, the NATO, the Food and Drug Administration in the US, of course the administration here in CIS, which require to have certain level of certification for our application. But again, our objective is to apply and accept the regulation in each and every market, as long as it doesn't violate our copyright, which is, of course, a very important point.
Last question.
I would like to ask a question about the research and development policy of SAP. What part of the revenue is usually spent on research and development developments, and what are you planning to develop in the near future?
Very good. So that allows me to also sketch something. So I use this paperwork for something. So SAP is spending 14% of its revenue in R&D every year. So we have 13,000 developers in our different labs across the globe that are every day trying to reinvent our software. Now let me just, that's the last minute, let me just sketch one thing here. What we believe is going to happen is that today, if you look at the IT spending of the company in Russia, the vast majority of their spending is in hardware and infrastructure. Another vast majority is in services. Actually, if you look at the real map, services is actually bigger than that. It's like this. Software is only 11% of the IT spending of the different companies in Russia. My view is that we're going to move to this direction. That's what we see in the rest of the Western countries. They are going to, hardware is going to become more and more a commodity. And as a result of that, the hardware cost is going to decrease comparatively to the rest. I think that when people will take advantage of the software and standard software that we sell, they will not need so much customization. And as a result of that, we will see a much more balanced picture between the software revenue and the software investment and the service investment. So we believe that fundamentally, what we will see is the software, even though the budget being equal, the software investment in Russia for companies in their IT budget will grow significantly in the next 3 to 4 years. Because this is where the value is. This is the piece that can change their processes. This is commodity, and this is becoming commodity with all the offshore facilities and the price dump that we see in the typical development of code. I think the whole value is going to go to our direction. That's why we believe that we have a nice and bright future, is that software is going to become more and more the heart of your IT spending and your IT system in the future.
May I have one more question?
Sure.
Well, I have the following question. What markets, I mean emerging markets, are of the main interest for SAP company along with CIS, which contribute mostly to your growth nowadays?
In terms of growth,
Yes.
Well, CIS will continue to be a significant growth engine for us. Our expectations are humongous, especially after we make this significant investment. I think we're investing 400 million, over 400 million in 4 years. So, of course, we expect to have the return of investment, which is growth here in Russia. Middle East is growing very fast. Africa is growing very fast, as opposed to Western Europe, when we see a growth, which will be much more moderate in the next 3 years.
Unfortunately, Frank has to go, but I will stay to answer also the questions concerning the local SAP and whatever other questions that you have.
So thank you very much for your time, and good luck for your career.
Наши планы Трансполкова следующие. Мы уже открыли исследовательскую лабораторию здесь, которая будет заниматься двумя основными направлениями. Во-первых, здесь будет достаточно большое, больше, чем несколькими направлениями. Во-первых, здесь будет подразделение именно исследовательское, то есть ресерчерское подразделение. И сейчас как раз в головном офисе определяют, какой топик нам доверят. Сюжет. Ну, там выбирается между 3 сюжетами, мы не хотим 3 раза это объявлять, по факту есть уже некий шорт-лист. Основной акцент в выборе сюжета – это способности исследовательские в стране. То есть, скорее всего, это будет связано с большими объемами данных, вот как раз вот с продолжением разработки Ханы. Второе подразделение будет разработческое чисто, потому что у нас и сейчас уже здесь разработческий отдел около 70 человек. Мы будем его расширять значительно и углублять локализацию тех решений, которые мы хотим на рынке позиционировать. А третья часть будет достаточно необычное изобретение SAP. Это подразделение, которое мы называем Co-Innovation Lab. Это по факту инфраструктура для поддержки разработки партнерами. То есть у нас и сейчас уже есть очень много партнеров, которые видят, например, какие-то определенные части процессов, которые мы не закрываем, и они хотели бы это доделать до нормального продукта, потому что написать просто строчки кода это недостаточно. То есть между написанием строчек кода и реальным продуктом очень еще большое расстояние. И в Co-Innovation Lab будет создана инфраструктура для того, чтобы партнеры могли получить, там, начиная с серверов, экспертов, какие-то тестовые tools и так далее, чтобы они разрабатывали, скажем так, дополнительные решения к нашему свиту.
Спасибо.
Ну, если нет никаких вопросов, может, я пару слов скажу реально про рекрутинг. Ну, наверное, да.
Могли бы микрофон
взять? По поводу рекрутинга, как Франк и сказал, мы очень активно нанимаем людей, и есть несколько вариантов, каким образом вы могли бы поучаствовать. Ну, во-первых, мы всех, кто хочет к нам попасть на летнюю практику, с удовольствием возьмем. Там это может быть в разные подразделения, под разными условиями. Во-вторых, у нас есть для выпускников уже вузов так называемая Young Professionals программа, когда мы берем человека на год и прикрепляем к какому-то подразделению, у него есть менторы, определенная девелоперская программа, и по результатам года, ну, сейчас мы так отбираем, что 100% из них становятся полноценными сотрудниками. Вот. Что же касается как бы специализации направлений, наверное, это для вас важно. Ну, вот кроме Сколково лаба, где у нас будет девелоперское подразделение, которое я описала, конечно, 2 основные функции в CIS. Это первое – это продажи, а второе это консалтинг. То есть помимо этого, конечно, у нас есть много других направлений, government relations, маркетинг, но два основных направления это продажи и консалтинг. Поэтому, если вам интересно, ну, начнем с того, что sap.ru, да, www.sap.ru, все очень просто. Ну, с третьего, я думаю, да, после третьего, да. Вот. Ну и реально у нас есть в вашем вузе представитель, через которого можно тоже уточнить всякую информацию.
У вас только операторов вот показали на слайдах, то, что больше 900 тысяч по всему миру. Вы используете аутсорсинг или нет? Часто используется аутсорсинг, например, нанимаются компании в Индии, которые...
На самом деле идеология SAP подразумевает, что мы свои решения пишем сами. Это проверено на практике, что аутсорсинг это, конечно, очень классная и широко рекламируемая тема, но если вы хотите ставить свой бренд и свое IP на продукте, то нет, аутсорсинг мы практически не используем, если сказать не используем. То есть все те 4000 китайцев и 5000 индийцев это наши собственные сотрудники. В отличие от IBM и от многих других компаний, либо мы покупаем консалтинговые или разработческие компании, но мы их конвертируем 100% под свои процессы, под свои стандарты, под свои tools. Вот. Что мы делаем? У нас есть достаточно большая сеть к нам дружелюбных или из нас как бы выросших компаний, которые пишут на нашем софте, которые на нашем языке, которые знают наши принципы. Это мы делаем. Но вот как бы совсем чужеродный аутсорсинг мы не делаем вообще. Потому что мы хотим гарантировать качество прежде всего. Вот начиная там через несколько месяцев там 1 200 000 работников Министерства обороны Российской Федерации будут получать зарплату, рассчитанную в SAP. Я всегда привожу этот зарплатный пример, потому что, наверное, в особенности люди, работающие на фабриках и заводах, они каждый месяц хотят смотреть на свой расчетный листок и проверяют, да? Вот сейчас по миру 50 миллионов человек получают зарплату, рассчитанную в SAP. И если мы где-то ошибемся и что-то не так сделаем, это там забастовки и так далее. Да, Сбербанк тоже, да.
А стипендиальная практика?
Что-что?
А стипендиальная практика не обеспечивается?
Что? И не поняла.
Стипендиальная практика, то есть стипендию никто не...
В том числе, да. У нас есть клиенты, хороший, кстати, вопрос, у нас есть клиенты среди вузов, в особенности больших немецких, американских вузов. Тема та же самая, да, и стипендию мы тоже рассчитываем.
А скажите, пожалуйста, в плане сотрудничества с Сбербанком, какие именно инструменты собираетесь для находиться, если там будет?
Где тут у нас disclosure agreement? Во-первых, они внедряют бэк-офис наш, я не думаю, что это большой секрет, то есть финансовый, контролинговый, аккаунтинговый цикл, закупки, и потом мы с ними очень тесно сейчас работаем по мобилити. Я не знаю, если вы отслеживали прошлогодний Санкт-Петербургский форум, мы с ними совместно делали там большой стенд и большие как бы демо-сценарии вокруг мобильного бэнкинга, то есть вот это сейчас два. И онлайн-бэнкинг. Но онлайн это как бы, да, это вот все, что surface, любой surface может быть. Главное, что там, за surface.
Core banking, у вас есть план?
Да, значит, core banking, спасибо, хороший вопрос. Core banking это одно из больших, да, у SAP есть решение, и это один из самых больших секретов в мире, что у SAP есть 120 core банковских клиентов по миру. К ним относятся такие банки, как Dresdner Bank, Standard Bank of South Africa, Deutsche Post Bank и многие швейцарские банки. Да, мы уже локализуем решение кобэнкинга для России. Это большой кусок наших инвестиций. И именно под это, например, мы большую часть лаба будем отдавать. И собираемся уже к концу года поразить рынок этим. Спасибо вам огромное. Удачи в учебе.